You could be the smartest person in the world, but if you can't communicate to anyone, it doesn't matter, right? You need to be able to communicate and understand what the other person is looking for and make sure you're speaking in their language. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome, and a few extra welcomes because I am so happy to be here. Hopefully, you know what time it is, right? It's time for Life of a CISO with yours truly. Dr. E is in the house. I hope you're doing awesome. I'm doing awesome. I always love spending some time with you. And remember, we're not just talking about the life of a CISO. We're talking about your life. And we're not just talking about any life. We're talking about a world-class life, right? I want you to be world-class. As I often say, if you just want to be average, if you just want to be good enough, if you just want to get a job as a CISO, you might listen to one or two of my episodes. Let's be honest. You're going to get annoyed and frustrated, right? Because I'm going to push you. I'm going to push you to the limit because I want you to be the best there is. I haven't talked about it in a while, but if you haven't picked up my book, Cyber Crisis, it is a great book to show you the level you need to communicate with executives at. I actually wrote this book for two reasons. The original reason behind Cyber Crisis was I'm all about solving problems, and I don't need to solve a problem if it exists already. So I was having a lot of people say, is there a good book for executives that they could read in a few hours that's written in business language, that's not technical, and helps them understand the big picture problems in cyber and how it fits into a business perspective? So I looked, and I looked, and I looked, and such a book didn't exist. So as I often do in my career, when there's a problem and there's no solution, I create one. So that was the reason behind Cyber Crisis, was a resource for executives, really for any non-technical folks, so they could better understand the problem and the issues that they're up against. But as I'm writing this and finishing it and going through it and doing the final edits before it was published, I realized there was a hidden second benefit or gem that in some cases might even be more valuable, which is it gives up-and-coming CISOs and CISOs or anyone in tech the level they need to talk to executives. I'll often get folks going, Eric, I feel like when I go in and talk to the CEO or COO or vice president or the board of directors, I'm not speaking their language. I'm at a different level or I'm too technical. And you're probably right. So Cyber Crisis, even though you'll know what's in it, it shows you the level. It shows you the language. It shows you how to look at executives. And it's funny because one of my favorite comments I got from Cyber Crisis, my team actually thought was the worst comment. So we monitor and watch, and we got a lot of positive reviews and a lot of 5 stars, and everyone really liked the book. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, we got a 1 star. And my team gets all upset, right? Because they know I'm about knocking it out of the park and always achieving expectations, and I don't like that. But I read the comment, and I smile. The person basically said, I have read all of Dr. Cole's previous books, and they are all super technical and go into technical detail. This book is not technical. It's high level. And it's written as if an executive could read it to understand cybersecurity. And I'm like, yeah. Now, the fact that they gave me a 1 star for that was a little frustrating because I'm like, dude, you nailed it. This book is not a technical book. I never said it was. I never claimed it was. This was written for executives in a way that they can understand cybersecurity. So I sort of laugh how I took it as a positive and the individual that wrote the recommendation took it as a negative. So this is a book, I'm not just pushing it because I wrote it, but it's a book that can really help you and help your executives. So if you're not taking advantage of it, you do want to make sure you go in, pick up a copy, read it. You'll read it in a couple hours and then pass it on to your executives. So what I really want to talk about today is I often get asked these questions when I do panels and discussions. And one that I got recently is, what is the most important skill for a CISO? Now that's always a fun question because most important. There's a lot of important skills. And I will be honest with you, if you listen to my Life of a CISO podcasts, or you even go in and watch me present or speak, my answers change. It's not that I'm contradicting myself. It's not that I was wrong before. It's that things evolve. And it's also based on the data I have. So I'm always talking with CISOs and executives, and it's always based on that data or information. Right now, today, sitting here, if you ask me that question, the most important skill for a CISO, I would say communication, communication, communication. You could be the smartest person in the world, but if you can't communicate to anyone, it doesn't matter, right? You need to be able to communicate and understand what the other person is looking for and make sure you're speaking in their language. And this is one that's difficult for folks that are transitioning from world-class security engineer to world-class CISO, because world-class security engineers communicate in a certain way. It's very technical, it's very detailed, and it's very focused on the problem. And if you're a world-class security engineer and you're presenting and some people don't understand what you're saying and they walk away going, wow, that person was super brilliant. That person was just so sharp. I had no clue what they were saying, but they were brilliant. That's probably okay. That might be okay and you can get away with it. But I'll tell you right now, as a CISO, if you go into executives in the boardroom and you go that route and they don't understand what you're saying, they come up with a different conclusion. I don't want to talk to you. You wasted my time. I have no clue what you were saying. They don't come away saying this guy was brilliant. They go, this person doesn't understand how to communicate. This person doesn't know what I'm looking for. And they don't want to communicate with you moving forward. Now, let me give you a couple of little indicators here on whether the executives believe or think you're a good communicator. First, are you invited to every board meeting? In almost all companies, there's going to be quarterly board meetings. They're going to meet, and cybersecurity is always going to be a topic. Whether it's a planned topic, an indirect topic, or a topic that just takes place in informal discussions, but it is always discussed. Question, are you invited to those meetings? If you are not invited to every one of those meetings, unfortunately, they don't view you as an effective communicator. Because if they did, they'd want you there. If they felt that you added value to every meeting you attended, they would have you there. So that's one data point. Another data point. When was the last time you met one-on-one with the CEO? When was the last time you met one-on-one with the COO? When was the last time you met one-on-one with the CFO? And when was the last time you met one-on-one with the chief legal counsel? Now, depending on the company and structure, you could have different Cs, but the core Cs, the core chiefs in every organization are typically CEO, COO, CFO, and chief legal counsel. There could be a couple more, but those are always the core ones. If you are chief information security officer or wannabe chief information security officer, you should be having regular discussions with those individuals and folks. So question, when was the last time you met with them? If you tell me monthly, pretty good. Weekly, awesome. Daily, double cold stars, right? So you want to go in and have pretty frequent meetings with them. It should be at least once or twice a month. Now, let me help you out here. The other chiefs, CEO, COO, CFO, Chief Legal Counsel, if you ask them the question, when was the last time you talked to other chiefs, it would probably be hourly or daily. So you need to have frequent open discussions with them. If you haven't met with them in a couple months, a quarter, or a year, or never, that's an indicator that they don't view you as having value. Now, it could be two things here, just so we're clear. If you have never met with them, if you are a new CISO and you've never met with them, it could be because of your predecessor. Your predecessor wasn't a good communicator. Therefore, they assume you're not a good communicator and they don't want to talk to you. So that's not bad because that's fixable very, very quick. Everything's fixable, by the way, but that one's fixable very quick. However, if you have met with them in the past and you haven't met with them since, that's problematic. Because think about this. If you hang out with somebody and they're really cool and they're awesome and they provide a ton of value and you walk away going, that was a very valuable 60 minutes, what are you going to do? Text them, want to hang out with them again, meet up with them again. But if you meet with somebody and it's hard and it's painful and like you're looking at your watch the whole time going, when is this going to end? And then the meeting ends and you're like, thank you, it's over. And you're inadvertently thinking, I never want to do that again. Are you going to reach out to that person? Are you going to be responsive to them? Are you going to want to set up meetings? No. So it's just a simple value proposition. If you provide value and somebody enjoys the conversation, they will want to meet with you more. Final data point on whether you are viewed as a good communicator or not. When you try to set up a meeting with the CEO, COO, CFO, how long does it take and how often is it postponed or canceled? Because I'll tell you right now, if you go in and you reach out to the CEO or COO, CFO, they're going to have an executive assistant. And if they come back and go, listen, they're super busy, I can't fit them in for 2.5 or 3 months. Let me help you out here. Everybody has time. My EA will do that if they don't view the meetings as high priority or super important and it's not time sensitive. Yeah, I am busy. But if there's a critical thing that's happening or something that's occurring or a crisis, there's always time. So if they're not fitting you in for 3 months, that means that either they or the executive have told them you are not that important. Then here's the big one. When it gets time for the meeting, that 3-month meeting that took 3 months to schedule, do they postpone? Because I'll just let you in. Executives, a week ahead of time, they're going to look at their calendar and they're going to always try to free up space. So if they look at calendar and go, oh, there's a meeting with that Eric guy. He's a CISO. It's checking a box. I'm going to go to my EA and go, push that out a week or two. I know it's eventually going to have to happen, but let's postpone pulling the Band-Aid, right? Well, let's just push it off a little bit, push it off a little. These are all indicators that you have not proved to be a great communicator or provided value. The ideal scenario is if you reach out to the EA of the CEO, COO, you should be viewed as so important and so critical that when you say, listen, it's important and I need to talk to them, they're like, I can get you in tomorrow. Or they have to leave early today, but they'll be on their cell phone. Why don't you call them at 5:30 p.m., right? They will fit you in. That's where you want to be. You want to be in a situation where the execs are reaching out to you. They are requesting meetings, and when you reach out to them to request a meeting, you get scheduled within hours, if not a day. So these are all data points. Once again, it's all fixable, but I want you right now to honestly assess how well do the other executives view you as a communicator. And if you're not a CISO yet, how well do other peers, managers, directors view you as a communicator? Now be careful, because I remember a situation where I often sit in and give coaching or advice to the CISOs. So I remember sitting in a board meeting where the CISO came in and starts presenting, and they have a 45-page slide deck, and within 30 seconds, everyone in the room is on their cell phone. Nobody really asks a question. Nobody looks up. Nobody says anything. And the CISO gets done. They go, thank you. And after the CISO leaves, I kid you not, the door shuts. And they all look at each other and they're like, thank you, that's over. Right? They all sort of laugh and chuckle because they're checking a box, but they got zero value out of it. So then I run out of the room and I run up to the CISO and I go, hey, question. How do you think that went? How well do you think that meeting occurred? And they're like, Eric, I crushed it. I knocked it out of the park. And I'm like, interesting. I said, what data points are you using to come up with that conclusion? And they said, well, Eric, did you see how comprehensive that slide deck was? I was able to get through all those slides. Did you see how impressive those stats were on that slide? So their criteria, and here's number one rule of communication. Their criteria was based on how they would process the information. So because they had a 45 slide deck that they loved, that if there were 50 of them in the room, would have enjoyed it and thought it was awesome and great, and they thought it was super technical and they thought the numbers looked good, from their perspective, they then deemed and determined that they crushed it. Number one rule of communication. It's about the person you're communicating with, not you. Biggest mistake I see. You're not the audience. You don't matter. It's who you're communicating with. And this is a fallacy that we've been brought up with. Many of you have probably heard the phrase, treat people the way you want to be treated. It sounds good. It rolls off the tongue. It's totally and completely wrong. Everyone is not like you. Everyone is different. Everyone is unique. Everyone has a different perspective. So if you are treating other people the way you want to be treated, and they're not you, they're not going to be happy. They're going to be frustrated. So it's a phrase that sounded good when you were growing up and a little kid, but it's not true. The correct version of the phrase, treat people the way they want to be treated, which means, do you understand what they want? So I went back to this CISO that said, I crushed it. And I said, question. You crushed it. What you just told me was, from your perspective, if you were the audience, you crushed it. You presented on what you wanted to hear. So I said, yeah. I said, were the people in the audience you? Are they of your level? Do they think like you and act like you? And they were sort of like, no. I'm like, let me ask you a question. How many people were paying attention? I'm like, what do you mean? They were so absorbed in themselves and the presentation, they weren't even paying attention to the audience. I said, do you realize within 30 to 45 seconds, everyone was on their cell phone? You realize nobody asked a single question? Nobody really engaged and nobody took notes at all? And I wasn't trying to be mean. I was just trying to give perspective. And then finally, after talking, they're like, well, maybe I didn't crush it. Exactly. So a couple tips of communicating. Is the other person engaged? If I'm giving a presentation, I'm doing two things. I'm presenting and I'm scanning the audience and I'm watching. If I start seeing many people on their cell phones or others, I will immediately do what's called a communicator disruptor. I will say something bizarre, say something unique, out of the ordinary to get everyone's attention, and then I re-engage them. But I don't continue down the path because I lost the audience. So if you're presenting to executives or even one-on-one and somebody picks up their cell phone, you lost them. They're basically saying, this is not important to me. I'm going to do something else. If you continue talking, you're wasting time, energy, and effort because they're no longer paying attention. Next, are they taking notes? Are they going in and writing down what you say? Because that means what you're saying is really, really important, and you should do more of it. And then finally, are they engaging? Are they asking you questions and being involved in what we're saying? If they're not, you need to engage them. Ask questions. Go in and say, hey, I'm curious, what's really important to you? Or one of my favorite questions. If there's one thing that I can cover in this meeting that would be very valuable to you, what would it be? What would be a piece of information that if I was able to answer or solve or give you the information for would make this one of the most valuable meetings you've had this week? Pretty interesting, right? So you need to engage those folks. So go in and do an honest assessment. Don't be like that CISO and say you crushed it because you thought it was good from your perspective. From the other person's perspective, how well was it? And here's what I want you to do. I want you to carry around with you a little notepad. I'm still old school, by the way. I still, in my suit jacket, I have the little notepads. Remember the ones in elementary school? Well, maybe not with you because I'm older, but when I was in elementary school, we used to have a little, it was like index card size that had spirals at the top, and it was a little flip book. You can still buy them. And it's what you wrote your homework in. At the end of the day, the teacher would put the homework up on the corner of the chalkboard. Yes, we still had chalkboards back then. And you would go into that little book and you would write it down. And then that became your code for the day. You would go in and say, okay, is that done? Is that done? Is that done? It would help you track and monitor. So what I recommend is, and you can use apps on your phone. You don't have to use the pad, but like I said, I'm old school. But I carry that. And after every meeting, I give myself a quick evaluation. How engaged were they? How many questions did they ask? How much did I listen? How much did I pay attention? And I just assess, and then here's the big thing. I always, 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 always answer this question. What is one thing I could have done better? What is one thing I could have improved on? Now, here's the cool part. If you're having 5 or 6 meetings a day, and after every one of them, you're finding one thing to improve and one thing to get better, in a month or two, you're going to be really, really good at communicating, right? Because you're always improving. That's the trick. Continuous improvement. Always get better and better and better. So here's some of the things you evaluate. Communication is two-way. It's not one-way. It's two-way. If you are talking the whole time, you are not a good communicator. Now, we're talking about meetings here. We're not talking about keynotes or presentation, right? That's a little different. A keynote is normally going to be a 90-10. If I'm giving a keynote, I'm doing 90% of the communication because that's what I'm there for. They are paying me or I'm on stage to give information to the audience, and then I ask a little Q&A, so I get a little back. So it's about 90-10. If you're giving a presentation like at a board meeting, that's probably going to be about 70-30. ideally 60-40. Yes, you're there to present, but you want to get data from them. You want to receive information. So you're talking 60% of the time and getting them communicating 40%. On normal one-on-one or small group meetings, so if you're one-on-one or one-on-two or one-on-three, it should typically be about 40-60. You should be talking about 40% and let them talk 60. 50-50 is okay. More than that is problematic. If you're in a group discussion, so you're in a meeting with 8 or 10 people, and it's not your meeting, you're there as a participant, then it probably should be 10-90, where 10% of the time you're talking and 90% of the time they're talking. Now, here's the cool part. The less you're talking, the more impactful it needs to be. So if you only, in a meeting, are talking 10% of the time, you better make sure that 10% is very, very powerful, impactful, and on target. Because that's all they're going to remember. So the less you talk, the more targeted it needs to be. Now also remember, one of my favorite rules I always like remembering. You speak with your mouth, which you have one of, and you listen with your ears, which you have two of. Maybe whoever designed and created us was trying to tell us something. Maybe, just maybe, listening is more important than talking. And that's really the trick here. Most people are not very good listeners. Most people are so focused on getting the next word in. And I love watching people. I was just at a wedding this past weekend, and I was watching and observing the communication. It's funny because you're seeing a group of people communicate, and one person's talking, and the other people in the group, most of them are like they're so focused on jumping in and speaking that they're not even listening to what the person's saying, right? They've already decided, I'm going to jump in and say X. Therefore, it's irrelevant what else comes out of that other person's mouth. And that's problematic because that is not communicating. That is called talking past each other. That is called having independent conversations with yourself in which other people happen to be around, right? So you don't want to do that. So focus on being a better listener. Are you really listening to what they're saying? Are you really processing and understanding it? Some great communication tips. Summarize what the other person said. So before you start talking, go, hey, that was a really good point, and I just want to summarize. You're basically saying that the biggest priority over the next quarter is not increasing revenue, but increasing our profits. I have a question. So that's very powerful. Now, quick. Don't repeat back everything they said. That proves nothing. Right? I know a lot of smart people. You're with your significant other, and you see this. You're not listening to what I'm saying. And you can sit there and go, you said blah, 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 blah. All you did was record and play back. Your brain is very good at recording and playing back. That doesn't mean you listen. Listen means you processed the information, understood what they said. Summarizing means you listened. Playing back doesn't. Then another really good communication skill. Ask a follow-up question. So I just want to summarize. You said X, and I have a question. Does that mean Y? And what you're doing now is you're engaging with the other person. They're now going, wow, this person is interested. They understood what I said, and they want to find out more information or more details about it. So those are some of the key things. Start taking an honest inventory. After every meeting, give yourself a score on how well you did. And I don't care if you gave yourself an A+. Always answer the question, what could I have done better? How can I improve my communication skills? Final wrap-up. I talk to a lot of executives. And I ask them, how often do you meet with the CISO? And I often get the answer, never, very infrequent, and I don't really like having those meetings. And I say, why? And they go, because they're not speaking my language. When they talk, I don't understand what they're saying. And that's where you got to know how to switch. World-class CISOs can translate on the fly. World-class security engineers can. A world-class security engineer speaks in a language that executives don't understand and don't care about. You need to understand business. You need to read business books and speak their language. Other big item that I hear from executives is, I don't feel like they're listening to me. I feel like when I talk to the CISO, they have a message and an agenda, and they don't care what I want to hear. That is also powerful. When you go into a meeting with the executives, don't have a speech. Listen and answer their questions. Provide value to them, and you will be world-class. So I just want you the next couple of weeks, really become aware, keenly and focused and aware on your communication. How well do you communicate? And do that little evaluation I did in the beginning. How often are you invited to meetings? How long does it take to set up a meeting? How long does it get Those are all indicators of they're indicators of whether you're good or bad. If you're not inviting to meetings, bad. If you're inviting to meetings, good. If you can get a meeting set up with an executive within hours, awesome. If it takes months and it's postponed, not so good. So there are real-world indicators from other people that you can use to determine how good or bad your communication skills are. And if you want to be world-class, you must be a world-class communicator. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Life of a CISO, and we'll see you next week.